Somebody else put it in the corner.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Jenny, roll call, please.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Here.
Charlie Schneider.
Here.
Mark Bowman.
Here.
Angie Skillings. Here. Carl Palmer.
Here.
Abe Smith.
Here.
Dominique Stewart. Here. Rachel Henderson.
Here.
Okay, we have a quorum. So do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Does anybody have anything on the agenda order?
Mission statement?
Apologies. Sorry. I'm a little bit out of sorts this evening. This is my second board meeting this afternoon. I do, it's right here, but I talked loud enough, I don't need the microphone. So the mission statement, the school district of the Menomonie area, by embracing the unique needs and using the strengths of our diverse community, is dedicated to preparing all students to become the lifelong learners, caring individuals, and responsible citizens. Thank you for the reminder on that, Amy. Now, does anyone have anything on the agenda order or revisions? Nothing? All right. I have a note on the agenda. We have a closed session scheduled. We don't necessarily need to go into closed session. That'll be up to us at the time. Someone can make a motion to do so if you feel the need to do so. The intent of the closed session is to have a discussion about a specific person, where that discussion in open session would likely to have a substantial adverse effect on their reputation. So if you feel that we need to have a discussion about something like that, we can go into closed session and do that. If you don't feel the need for that, then we can just move on and continue an open session with all of our discussions and voting to bring a new member onto the board. Okay? So when we get to that point, if somebody feels the need to go into open session, we can make that. You can make that motion and we can work through that. If not, we'll just move on. All right. Recommendations and accommodations. None for tonight. All right. And then community communications. So as I've been pointing out through the last few board meetings, the opinions, beliefs, and viewpoints expressed by the various speakers during community communications do not necessarily reflect the opinions, beliefs, and viewpoints of individual board members, the board as a whole, or the school district of the Menomonie area, nor do they reflect the official policies of the Sdma. With that, what we'll do is we have 3 people to speak in, let's call it normal community communications. And then we have the people who would like to become members of the board, and we'll put all of them together at the end. So with that, Ms. Pillman, you'll be first, and then Paul will be second, and then Stuart Parsons.
My name is Josie Pillman, and I live at 235 3rd Avenue East, Knapp, Wisconsin, and that is in the Menomonie School Board, the Menomonie School District. Zajdowski, President Charlie Schneider, and members of the board. Monkeypox. We have a new disease that is spreading across our landscape. This one is mostly spread to a specific vulnerable population, specifically gay men who are sexually active. If that population would remain celibate, they would have little chance of contracting the disease. It is important that our students understand this virus. The solution for controlling its spread is proper information and disciplined moral behavior. This should be taught in our schools. Wrong is always wrong. Looking at our history as a nation, AIDS was and is a disease that is best controlled by behavior modification. If a person remains sexually celibate, except within the moral guidelines given by our Creator, that person would avoid mostly sexually transmitted infections. Do not be ashamed or embarrassed to use the term moral. There was a time when AIDS was running rampant in Africa and other parts of the world. Before a person from those parts could enter the U.S., they needed to have a clean medical record. Then laws were slackened and morality was mocked. All were let in with their lax morals and disease-ridden bodies. The push came to look for a cure to enable the immoral, undisciplined behavior to thrive without getting caught, so to speak. This kind of thinking and behavior has pushed deeply into the moral fabric of our community to our demise. Likewise, the birth control pill was pushed in order to bring in the sexual revolution. Now we could have illicit sex with whoever we wanted without being exposed to a pregnancy. All thoughts of moral laws were pushed aside in order to get the instant gratification. My laws did not consider the hurt it was doing to my neighbor or to the fabric of my community. The sexual revolution led to legalized abortion. If the court said it was the law of the land, it must be okay. It never was. It still isn't, and many precious human babies were murdered as a result. Literally millions. Wrong is always wrong. Our students must be taught good character. There are many reasons for sexual purity. Physical health is only one of them. A good conscience is another. Emotional and financial health and strong moral communities are others. Let's take a good look at the Sdma's gender policy plan. Let's teach our children how to avoid monkeypox through moral living. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pillman. Alexander Hall.
Hello, my name is Alexander Hall. I live in the city of Menomonie and my son attends the high school here. Happily, I am not here tonight to talk about masks. Unhappily, I'm here because some folks have been implying that the moral character of our teachers is somehow lacking or in jeopardy. This could not be further from the truth. In my experience at the elementary, middle, and high school levels, our district is fortunate to have many dedicated, honest, talented, hardworking, compassionate, and courageous teachers who take their responsibilities to our students seriously. They understand that not only is it illegal to discriminate against those who happen to be different from you or believe differently from you, it is morally wrong. They also believe that as educators, part of their job is to expose students to new ideas and perspectives outside their own personal experience so that they can grow and learn. These teachers recognize and honor the fact that our schools serve students who are white, black, brown, immigrant, and first generation, and that they each have unique experiences. We also have students who are Christian, Mormon, Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, and atheist. Some students live with a mom and a dad. Some live with two dads, or two moms, or a single parent, or grandparents, or an adult sibling, or foster parents. All of these families are valid and deserve our support. And yes, some of our students are gay or trans too. Our students, and hopefully our staff, represent the full scope of American society in all its variety. And I'm grateful that, as a public school system should be, our schools are a welcoming place for all Americans. My second reason for speaking tonight is that I happen to know two of the candidates for the open board position, Chelsea Lovejoy and Amber Kirsting. I would like to say that both are outstanding individuals. They are both kind and thoughtful, good at listening, and very skilled at considering multiple perspectives and then finding common ground and a way forward. Chelsea's psychology expertise would be highly valuable as the board considers ways to best support student mental health. Amber's many community connections would make her an asset who can ensure that all voices in our district are being heard. Finally, both Chelsea and Amber are interested in this position not for personal ambition, but to serve our community and our students. I feel that either would be an excellent choice. I don't happen to know the other candidates, and I wish you the best tonight in your decision. Thank you.
David Stewart Parsons.
Hi, my name is Stuart Perrins, and I'm at N4497, 410th Street here in Menomonie. I didn't know like what the protocol was for coming up in front of y'all to talk about like who you might think is going to be a great board member and what have you. And I thought, well, I'm going to I have a lot of respect for Chelsea Lovejoy. I've known her for 10 years, and I think that she is on a personal evolution herself back to the community, and I think it's important. I had a whole spiel done, but something just happened a few minutes ago that kind of charged my emotions. I think it's really important that this board bring the truth. And for example, about monkeypox, it's not just gay men that are having this disease. I happen to be an openly gay man. My husband and I have been together for 30 years. I think the school district has a responsibility to give information back to the kids that is truthful and honest, and that's what we really need to do. So for me, Chelsea, and I'm sure other members of the board that have been brought forward would be bringing that truth to the students, and that's what they deserve. Thank you.
Okay. With that, we will move to the 7 potential candidates. I'd like to just say at the outset, thank you all, 7 of you, for putting yourselves out there. I know that that's not always an easy thing to do. When I ran for election, I was, everyone in the community was voting for each of us as we ran. You're going to have 8 people vote for you. It's a little bit of a different thing, I think. So we appreciate you putting yourselves out there and expressing your interest. So I will, Chelsea Lovejoy will go first, Dale Dahlke will go second, Jim Tripp third, Dan Wangle fourth, Scott Parker fifth. Did I miss one? Brittany, did you want to speak?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. So with that, Chelsea, you're up, and you'll have 3 minutes. And just for the board members, this isn't intended to be an interview, so we're to hear the candidates, and we'll move on from there. Thank you.
Hello, thank you tonight for your time. My name is Chelsea Lovejoy. I live at 1924 Avenue in North Menomonie, and I've applied for the school board position. So this is a unique situation to be in. Tonight I've been invited to speak to inform your decision for a new board member, but I recognize that ultimately it is all of you that I will be serving and supporting in this. And so you've all received my materials already, so I really want to address the rest of the community to introduce many of you who I have not met before. I am a working mother with a child who attends Oaklawn Elementary. I've lived in Menomonie for 10 years, and I've moved here to teach psychology at UW South. In school, I studied academic motivation, and from a young age, education and helping others become the best version of themselves has been my passion. If I am selected, what you will get with me is someone who leads with compassion and respect for those who I work with and serve. As a leader, I focus on listening to the needs of those around me to inform my decisions. Over the last few years, there has been a lot of calls for grace in education. Grace for our students, for our teachers, for the administration as they make difficult decisions. And for many, this is meant to be kind and be patient. In the past year, however, I was introduced to a different idea of grace. Grace meets you where you are, but does not leave you where it found you. As a leader, I will listen to the needs of the district and the community to meet you where you are. I will then do my homework to find best practices to help elevate our district so that our kids get the best education and developmental support possible. As part of this, I will listen to the needs of our teachers and staff, because creating the best space for our kids means making sure that those who support them also feel supported, trusted, and respected for the expertise and the work that they do. In my job, I regularly engage in professional development training to improve my own abilities as a teacher. I serve and lead committees at UW Scout to improve the experience of education and sense of belonging for students on our campus. I also have experience working with stakeholders to balance local needs within state-level requirements. Grace, meeting someone where they are, but not leaving them where you found them. If selected to serve, I will lead with compassion and understanding. I will do so by listening to the needs of our community and working collaboratively with the board members to continually improve the experience that the school district can offer to our children and the community at large. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Dale Dahl.
Philadelphia, 1880s, 790th Avenue, Knapp, Wisconsin. I'm applying for the open position on your Board of Education, and I'd like to emphasize a few things about Philadelphia that were on my application and add some things that you may not know about me. I am currently on one nonprofit board and previously on 2 others because I like to serve nonprofits as a consensus builder. After retiring from biology teaching, which was the career of my passion, I had 2 retirement jobs. First as an interim activities director for 2 years. My goal was to restore the total activities portion of the job instead of the traditional athletic director emphasis. I worked well with Audric and Jake in forensics and science Olympiad, in drama and band and choir. I want to point out that not only were my 3 kids involved in concert band, marching band, pep band, drama productions, forensics, but I've also been a member personally of a singing group or a choir every year since I was age 12. So working with the arts has been very important to me. My second retirement job is working at UW South and Educational Talent Search, which is a TRIO program, working with first-generation high school students who may not have had anyone at home to encourage and to enlighten them to the benefits of continuing their education beyond MHS. Here I use my master's in guidance and counseling on a daily basis. This turned into an extremely rewarding 4 years. Recently, I've been involved with Trout Unlimited and teaching fly fishing to students in summer school, twice this summer to grades 3 through 5. I don't know if you can appreciate the challenge that and also to a wide spectrum UW South fly fishing class annually for the past 15 years, and to middle school and high school students on occasion. I worked through Kristen Humphrey at Knapp Elementary to engage the entire elementary grades in the stocking of trout in the Knapp Pond ever since 2006. I worked with 10 different area high schools, or area schools I should say, including 2 in our district, Downsville Elementary and Menomonie Senior High School, in a program called Trout in the Classroom. I find that even though trout and fly fishing are often the theme of these opportunities, I approach them with an emphasis on the value of preserving our clean, cold water resource. And I take every opportunity to point to the value of indicator organisms in our environment. I guess I'd like to say that I like to stay involved in the education of our youth.
Thank you. Mr. Tripp.
Thank you. Was that little dingy bell, was that the time?
That was his time was up, yeah.
Okay. Thought maybe he had something going. Good evening. My name is Jim Tripp. I'm from 621 Flagstaff Street in Menomonie. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about why I'm seeking the position on the school board. Menomonie has great schools, and they've got a proud tradition of academic excellence, which was a major factor when my wife Sharon and I moved here with our 2 children in 1987. Since then, Ben and Abby have graduated from Menomonie High School and are proud alumni. As for me, I have a wealth of experience in education. If you've read my letter, I've got over 50 years in one form of education or another. However, familiarity with the process is only one of the qualities I think you should be looking for in a member of the board that sets policy and then takes the responsibility for its execution and evaluation. So in addition to experience, another quality that a candidate should possess is a willingness and ability to learn. And I have demonstrated my educability for lots of years. One example that's been really given me a lot of personal satisfaction. After retirement from public school teaching, I accepted a challenge to master an entirely new set of knowledge and process. My degree is in history, and I spent my public education years teaching social studies in 7th through 12th grade. In 2006, I took a job teaching lead and asbestos to adults in the construction industry. An entirely new body of knowledge and an entirely new process for me. Our clients ranged from everything from the laborers who did the work to management planners and industrial hygienists. And I'm proud to say that by the end of that tenure, I was seen as a valuable asset and resource in that industry. Another quality of a successful board member is a temperament that encourages communication. I served on the Dunn County Board for 12 years, and during that time I had an opportunity to speak to lots of people on lots of issues. Many of those folks have values and goals that were significantly different from my own. But one thing I think each of them would say is that I listen to them with respect and attention. And the students and the families and the community in Menomonie can expect that same attention and respect if I were to be given this position. To return to an earlier point about learning, in county government I was able to expand my horizons. 12 years ago when I started my tenure on the county board, I couldn't have told you much about library planning committees, regional CDBG housing, opioid litigation, university extension, self-funded insurance. Today, I can bore you to death on all those topics. The fact is that the new member of the school board is going to have a pretty steep learning curve, and that's a significant challenge that I would look forward to. In closing, I have a long and varied history of service to the community. It's in my own best interest to have strong families, strong community, and a strong nation, and I would be proud to serve on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan Wingle.
Joe, I thank you for the invitation to come and talk, and thank you guys for your time and attention today. My name is Dan Weingold, and I am a 2002 graduate from MHS. And recently we had our 20th high school graduation reunion, and it was kind of fun to go back and see some old faces and swap some stories and reminisce about the good old times and share some laughs. And I'm sure had I known Mr. Elking was part of the singing group, there would have been more laughs to be had. But it was good, and it's good to step back after that experience and realize how important and impactful and formative those years were spent at Menomonie. And that's part of the reason why I'm here is to do my part to ensure that future students and graduates feel the same way that I do and have this positive experience as I did. The other reason I'm here is my wife Corinne and I have 5 kids, ranging from 2 to almost 10. So obviously we'll have a very vested interest in Menomonie's educational system for a long time to come here. We like to do a lot of the Menomonie high school athletic and extracurricular activities. We like to go to a lot of the football games, boys, girls, basketball, soccer, gymnastics. Kids love to do all that. So they're really involved, they like it. They do a lot of activities themselves. And I like to volunteer my time helping coach. We coach, softball, baseball, soccer, basketball, pretty much you name it. I like to do it. It's fun to watch the kids meet other kids, within the community, watch them grow, work together, despite their ability levels, their interest levels, especially at that age, their backgrounds, to come together, work together, to become successful, hopefully have some fun along the way, and kind of watch them grow. And I think that's kind of a microcosm of the community and the school board and the educational system in general. There's a diverse group of kids that need to come together every day to become, work together, get along, understand the differences, their similarities, to become, work hard and become successful, hopefully have some fun. And I think if I was on the school board, I'd like to do my part to ensure that the community in general does the best that they can to the best of their abilities to help those kids have as positive of an experience as I did at my time. So I encourage you, if you have any questions or concerns, to reach out to me at any time.
Thank you. Scott Parker.
Good evening. My name is Scott Parker. I live at 1109 North Shore Drive here in Menomonie. This isn't the first time you've seen me. I make it to most all the school board meetings. I ran for school board in the spring election last year. I came in 4th place. I earned 1,895 votes in our community. I'd be proud to serve members of our community, effective when you make a decision until this upcoming spring election. As elected members of our community to serve on the school board, whatever decision you make will be the right one. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, Scott. Just to be clear, is there anyone else, any other candidate that did not fill one of these out but does want to speak? Want to leave anybody out? All right. And I encourage, for those of you the 6 of you that aren't successful in this process, be looking at that December 28th roughly deadline, end of December deadline for filing, early January deadline for filing papers to become a candidate, for April election. We'll have 3 spots open there. All right. So moving on to revenue and expenditure reports.
Okay, we'll take a look at the July revenue report first, if you'd like to open that up. For the general fund 10 revenues, we received it in just over $1,000. It was $1,222.91. For Fund 21, our gift and donation fund, we received it in $10,731. And so far, 0 funding in Special Education Fund 27. Just a note for July revenues, we did receive the computer exemption aid payment from the state, but that is actually booked as a receivable back to June 30th, so that's why you don't see that here on this report for July. The next report, if you'd like to open that up, would be the expenditures by object. And this report is looking at all the funds combined. Fiscal year to date, we are at 2% compared to 2.92% last year. Nothing really to note except just timing of bills at this time. We did have some large textbook purchases this month compared to last year. And then also some software program purchases were a little bit larger this year compared to last year. And then the last report, the expenditures by function. If we take a look at Fund 10, our general fund, we are at 2.61% for the month of July compared to 3.37%. For special education, we're at 0.42% compared to 0.43%. And then Fund 50, our food service fund, we're at 1.10% compared to 1.02%. So pretty similar to last year, again, just some changes in one-time payments or timing of bills.
Any questions for Leah? Okay, thank you, Leah. Monthly employment report. All right. Questions, comments, anybody? All right. Moving on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as noted.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion by Amy and a second by Angie. Hey, it looks like he has a question.
I have a very minor question related to this agenda item. So there's a donation to the Food Angel Fund, which is fantastic to see. I know we'll discuss that a little bit later. I was curious if there is an online donation option, or is it only by check? Do you happen to know? I know it's a little bit off the wall, but, okay, I don't know. Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote. Motion passes unanimous. Yes, we can vote again.
Yeah, I got another request to vote.
All right,
Just ignore it.
Okay.
yeah.
I figured.
Moving on to the personnel consent agenda. There it is. Confirmed unanimous.
I think there's more board meetings on the third Monday. Slowing the software down across the country.
Make a motion to approve the personal consent agenda.
Second.
Motion by Carl, second by Mark to approve.
Charlie, I just want to point out, Audrey Bohr, our Director of Vocal Music and Theater Studies, he submitted his resignation at the beginning of the month. He has an opportunity at UW Stell. We're very happy for Mr. Bohr. Certainly big shoes to fill. I really enjoyed watching his work over the last several years. At the same time, very, very pleased with our HR department. You'll notice that in the request to hire, we have Grant Singer, a choir and theater teacher who will be coming to Menomonie High School. And we're very excited what Grant will be bringing to our school district. So there was a lot of interest. It's a great position. We wish Mr. Bohr well, but we're also excited for the future.
I have a question about one of the departures. There's a individual who left Menomonie for a nearby district in River Falls. And I'm curious, going back to the original discussion about kind of hiring process overall and making sure we're in an attractive place, if it's worth discussing at some later point, are there things about nearby districts which might attract people away that we should be aware of as a district? So not for this point in particular, but if people are moving to nearby districts, maybe worth thinking about kind of those attractions.
To follow up on that, I think it's always worth having those kinds of discussions. The individual you're referring to, we knew when we hired that individual that if he got the opportunity at that district, that he was going to take it. He did not get hired for a previous position there, but then they had a different vacancy. So it has to do more with familiarity and what's best for his family. So I do not think it's applicable to what you just mentioned.
Thanks.
And I guess I would add to that, I think, yes, there are things in neighboring districts that attract people, just like there's things here in Menomonie that attract people from neighboring districts. So it's, a trade-off at times. So some things we can do something about and other things we can't.
Exactly.
All right, vote. And we have a 7 to 0 to 1. So 7 yes, 0 no's, and 1 abstention. Motion passes. And now, if you would so like, we can move into closed session. If somebody feels the need to do so. Otherwise, we'll yes, Carl.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So there's a minutes approval here. If we do not do that, we just kick that to the next time, is that correct? Okay.
I have another question, and I realize maybe I should have asked this during the agenda approval, but before we decide whether or not we move into closed session, would it be appropriate for you to outline the process by which the board is going to deliberate and vote?
Sure.
And I think that process might inform whether or not somebody would want to take us into closed session.
Sure. So I'm actually opening up the policy. I intended to do that earlier, but policy 133 is what we're dealing with here. And it talks about how we fill a board vacancy. And I'm not going to read it all, but essentially it says that we can interview if we want. We don't have to. At a regular board meeting, we would have an election where we would have paper ballots, and at some point we'll do that, I hope. And then you will sign your ballot. If we don't come to a conclusion at that point, then we could have multiple ballots, and someone would change their mind, I suspect, or not. If we continue in a deadlock, we could, following the policy, we could appoint 2 people to go off and come to a consensus and bring back who they believe it should be, a recommendation at I would suspect, obviously, a later board meeting. Or we could suspend the rules and do it in another way. I know the last time it came down to this, they ended up some sort of I don't know if it was a coin flip or some sort of a random.
Do a name out of a hat.
Do a name out of a hat. They were deadlocked for a while, and then they ended up drawing a name out of a hat. Personally, I'd rather not do that. I would like us to come to consensus if we can. But, you know, it is what it is. We'll do the best that we can. We can, by a 2/3 vote, suspend the rules and do something different if we wanted to. And that's, I guess, up to the board, up to the pleasure of the board. I would suggest, I guess I was thinking that we would go into close, and if we need to, and answer any questions that may need to be answered at that point, come out of close and have a discussion amongst us of who we feel would be most appropriate, or maybe reverse that and vote right away after we come out of close, and then have a discussion about why I voted this way, or trying to convince someone to change their mind or something like that, and then just go through that. It's really, the way the policy is written, it's kind of up to us to come up with the exact process that we want. We could go into close now, we don't have to, then we could vote, or we could deliberate and then vote. Up to your pleasure, I guess.
Is the option to go into closed session only at this point? Or can we start this process and choose to go into closed session if there's something that we feel needs to be said?
My understanding is that because closed session is included in the agenda, as long as the will of the board is to go into closed session, it could do so at any time during the meeting.
Okay.
The important thing is that we also posted that the board will reconvene, which I'm you'd be surprised, but that's very important to allow the board to come back into session to continue with the meeting. Otherwise, that would not be a possibility.
I would hope that if we do go into close, that we can do it fairly quickly. We've got a fair number of people here that it would be nice to make, if we can, to come to a decision.
I would make a motion to go into closed session.
Okay, do we have a second to that motion? Do we have a second to that motion? All right, hearing no second, we will move on. Amy?
I would suggest that we just go ahead and vote. We got the credentials, we got the letters. You know, that would be my what I would like to do is just vote and then see how it comes out, and then if, you know, there's, you start eliminating who gets the least amount of votes, and the ones that are at the top, or there's a tie, then we work on that.
I guess part of what I wanted to discuss in closed session was a lot of what we talked about in some of our board retreats and meetings about us coming together as a consensus rather than have it be, say, a 3-5 vote. I mean, that's kind of what I was hoping that we could achieve in closed session is a full consensus.
No.
We can still discuss it and come to consensus in public, I believe, right? Like, the only reason we'd go into closed if it would be harmful to a person?
That is the only reason that we should go into closed. Everything else should be open public.
Yeah, so I think we can still achieve consensus from my point of view.
One thing though, to your comment, Amy, if we're going to go by the policy, the letter of the policy, trying to find it here, but if no applicant receives a majority of the first ballot and the names of more than 2 appeared on that ballot, the ballot for the second round will be limited to the 2 applicants who received the most votes originally. So if we have a vote and it ends up as, for instance, 4-4, then the next vote would only be with those 2 candidates.
Correct.
If we have a vote and it ends up 4-2-2, then those 3 candidates would be, but the others would drop away.
Right.
Okay.
I've done this many times before. Thanks for, clarifying.
I just wanted to remind, and for others who haven't done this before, like myself.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's helpful to know, and I think for that reason, I'm inclined to, I think it might be better to have some discussion before we vote. If by voting, unless we're prepared to suspend the rules, I guess, but if by voting we're automatically eliminating all but the top vote getters, then it makes sense to talk first.
One thing I thought of as I was considering, this is a large pool of interested folks. And so I was nervous of that. Now we eliminate everybody but 2 if we follow policy, which if that's the will of the group, I think that's what we do. But we could suspend the rules and amend that to the top 3 vote totals, which probably realistically would not, it would eliminate a few, but not as many. And we could see where we're at after that vote. Just something to consider.
Let's take a vote.
Well, wait, then, would you like to make a motion to suspend the rules to do the top 3 instead of the top 2?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the rules to include the top 3 vote totals if it is not a majority decision on the first vote.
I think we should wait to see how the voting turns out. I mean, potentially, we could have 7 people, like 7 to 2.
But would it be too late to suspend the rules after June? I don't know.
Right.
If it's 2, we pick the candidate person. Well, that's 9, it'd be 7 to 1.
At 7 to 2, we got a number wrong.
So I have a motion, if anyone wants to second. They don't have to.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out how to formulate what I'm thinking. And just like for everyone in the room, this is a really big and strong candidate pool. There's lots of really great people who applied, and that makes it particularly tricky, right? If there was 1 or 2 or 3 people who applied, probably a straight up vote would be very simple. I'm personally a little, although I understand the desire for it to be quick, I'm also concerned that very good candidates might be eliminated that we might all agree on if we just do 1 vote and it's either 4-4 or 5-3 or 6-2 or something. And then, someone else who we actually all would agree on, but wasn't anyone's absolute first choice, would just be out of the pool entirely. There's various ways of solving this, right? But, I think, in the interest of consensus, I prefer kind of to keep, I feel like if we vote and there's 2 top vote getters, there's someone who's not in those top 2, right? who everyone actually is like, yeah, I'm okay with that person, then we're actually kind of stuck in a situation where it's impossible to get the consensus position.
Okay, I'm gonna stop here. We have a motion on the table. I hear you moving towards another motion, but we need to deal with this one first. So we have a motion without a second. Does anyone second Carl's motion? Any second on Carl's motion?
Your motion was to keep the top three?
Top three vote total, so if it was, let's say, 4-1-1, you know, that would be the top three, even if there's a tie. It would be all three. It would be, yeah, right. It's because they tie.
But they're the top three vote against it. Do we have a second for Carl's motion?
I would like to second that.
Okay. Any discussion on that motion?
Just a question. We need then a 2/3 vote to approve that.
Yes, we do. Any other discussion?
In the scenario of Carl's proposal, there's several situations that it does not resolve, which we have to resolve by discussion and consensus building, which are 4-4 or 2-2-2-2, right? Anytime there's a tie, there's lots of combinations, right? So in the event that there is, say, 4, there are not 2 top vote getters, there are 4, right? That's sort of an unresolved situation, which then we could discuss and suspend rules again, but just to note that that's a concern with that system.
Any other questions, discussion? Carl?
Is it appropriate if Abe is working on a different alternative to offer some discussion of that before we decide to vote on what I put forth?
Like an amendment, maybe?
Well, no. Is there an approach that you're thinking about that might sway even how I would vote on my own motion?
Technically, it's whatever the board desires, we can suspend the rules entirely if we want to. So if that's what you want to do.
If there was a statement of, maybe another way to look at it would be this.
I think as a procedural matter, that would be fine. Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah.
Does anybody object to that? Does anybody have a concern? All right, Dave, what do you got?
So I don't have anything very clever at all. But I'm just trying to think about how can we make sure that, again, consensus candidates won't be eliminated too early when they might actually be the most consensus building candidates. One option would be to allow, on the initial vote, to allow each person to mark 2 names so that we can look for overlaps. So, of the 7, you can vote for 2, and then we look at the top vote getters of that collection. So that way we can basically write down, I find both of these people acceptable. And then that's a way maybe to find more consensus. There's more complicated systems, rankings and things like that, but I think something like that might be beneficial. I don't know. I mean, I don't have a simple answer. Maybe the answer is what Amy said, just vote and get it over with. That might be the way to go. Which Mark was like, yeah, let's do this.
Vote and see where we're at before we make additional.
Yeah, in any case, and if someone gets a simple majority at the beginning, we're done. Right. So maybe it doesn't ultimately matter.
Dave, one question with your thought there. 2 votes, could I vote for the same person twice, or do they have to be 2 different people?
I would suggest they have to be 2 different people, because the point is to spread out.
That's fair vote.
Yeah, which of course could end up with all 7, right? And then we're back where we started, and we lost 15 minutes of our lives, which we already have. Okay, that's all.
I think it is warranted to consider that if we don't suspend the rules somehow, even if we don't vote for what I just said, the policy is that our first vote will likely eliminate most of the candidates.
Amy?
I'd just like to say something, just kind of reiterate what you said at the very beginning when the board members came and spoke. But remember that there's an election in April, and you can't, if you don't, get in now, you can certainly, sign up for a 3-year term. for April. So just want to remind you of that.
Thank you. Great.
Back to the discussion, I think, I appreciate what Dave's saying, and I think you're not wrong. I think as a practical matter, like, it's hard to imagine a 2-2-2 split, or, maybe that's the fault of my imagination, but I do think that Carl's proposed solution, the motion on the table, it gets us pretty close to eliminating the problem you're talking about. So I'm inclined to support it.
Any other discussion on Carl's motion on the table? Okay. Jenny, do you have the motion?
I think so.
Okay.
Motion to suspend the rules to include top 3 vote totals, if not majority votes. I don't know why I had that.
Yeah, so if we don't have a vote of 5 for one candidate, then we would move on to the next vote, the top 3 vote totals.
And each board member gets 1 vote.
1 vote.
Should that be included in this motion?
Probably based on the discussion we just had. It doesn't hurt to clarify.
I'd also like to suggest that a month or 2 down the road, we should take a look at this policy. Excuse me?
Do you want Jenny to add that there's only 1 vote? Is that part of the motion?
Yeah, I don't think that's harmful to do. I'd like to amend it to include that statement.
I was just going to say throughout this whole process, if anybody feels like, I was going to come up with my term.
We know what you're
Yeah,
gonna
so
say.
I had to retract that. If anybody gets their feelings hurt, you're more than welcome to have my seat.
So you're telling me we got to do this again?
I would make it easy. At least we would.
All right. So, motion on the table. Any other discussion? Let's vote. Yes, please.
Rachel Henderson.
Aye.
Mark Hillman.
Oh, 6 passes.
Carl Palmer.
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Yes.
Charlie Schneider.
Yes.
Angie Skillings. Yes. Abe Smith.
Yes.
Dominique Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, unanimous. So, we will cast a ballot. Each person votes for 1. We will look at the totals when we're done at the top 3 vote getters. And the other 4 would drop off. And remember to sign your ballot at the bottom as well.
Please write in the number of the round. This is round number 1 at the top.
We just circle?
Yeah, you can just circle the name, and then please fold it in half, and Jenny could come around and pick them up, please.
Oh, wait, I got one.
And circle 1. We're done.
Maybe we're gonna know who's.
Dale Delkey. Chelsea Lovejoy. Dale Dalkey. Dale Dalkey. Dale Dalkey. Chelsea Lovejoy. Chelsea Lovejoy. Chelsea Lovejoy.
Top 3 vote getters, huh?
All right. So we're narrowed down to 2, Dale Dalkey and Chelsea Lovejoy from round 1. Do we want to vote right away and see if anybody wants to change their mind, or do you want to talk about it for a while? Yes, Amy, I'm
I
sorry.
just have a question.
Yeah.
With Gil Dalkey, I don't know if he's receiving retirement funds from the district, but there might be a time if he was appointed that he would need to abstain. And I don't know if that would be a problem for anybody. I know I abstained when my husband was working, and I know that Chris Freeman is abstaining from soccer stuff, and Jay Paul, when he was on, his wife at the time.
It's a regular course of action. I abstain quite often as well.
Okay, so I just wanted to
Because of my work.
understood that.
All right, here we go. I'm looking at the board members wondering what they want to do. This is your process, folks.
I want to go into closed session, nobody else did, so. Have at it.
You could motion to do that again.
And then nobody signs again, like.
That's certainly possible. I don't know
All right, I'll make a motion to go into closed session.
We have a second to that motion.
I'll second in the interest of hearing what we have to say.
Thank you, Dave.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Any, I guess no need for discussion. All in favor? Aye? You want to do better, okay. Do a voice vote, or a roll call vote, sorry.
Rachel Henderson. Aye. Mark Hillman.
Yes.
Carl Palmer.
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson.
Yes.
Charlie Schneider.
Aye.
Angie Skillings.
Yes.
Abe Smith.
Yes.
Dominique Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. We'll give a couple minutes, at 1:45, we'll come back.
That's fair.
Yeah, we'll let you all know when we're back in.
We're back in all this.
Why confusion is important for us, that we can acknowledge what we actually do.
Yeah. Thank you.
So you need to wait for Johnny.
Yes.
We didn't give her a lot of time.
Okay, we're back in open session. So we now have the option to vote again or to have discussion. Yeah.
I motion we vote again.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Mark and a second by Angie to do round two.
A question before we vote. So if this vote is also applied, is that a hat draw, or is that we keep discussing? I'm not sure how the policy goes from this point forward.
It's up to us to some degree. We've already suspended the rules, but once the field has been narrowed to two, if after two additional rounds, neither applicant is selected, the board may choose another method. That method consists of two board members selected by the board as a whole to meet, confer, and make a recommendation to the board, to the board on an applicant by the next regularly scheduled board meeting. So that would be, by policy, that would be the next move after two more rounds. Again, we could suspend and flip a coin right now if we wanted to. I'm not suggesting that.
I would prefer not to do that. I would like to get this over with this evening.
I would prefer not to flip a coin, but I would also prefer to get this over with. So I'm with you on both points there, Amy. We have a motion and a second on the table. Any other discussion? Okay. Just the voice vote. All in favor of of round two of vote?
Yes.
Opposed? Okay.
And we can only vote for either Dale or Chelsea, is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Amy. Only vote for Dale or Chelsea.
Chelsea Lovejoy. Dale Dalkey. Dale Dalkey. Dale Dalkey. Dale Dalkey. Chelsea Lovejoy. Chelsea Lovejoy. Chelsea Lovejoy.
And here we are. Any discussion? Anything?
We have to vote a second time, is that correct?
Well,
We
can discuss.
We can discuss first, but
Okay,
but by following the policy, yes, we do one more round
Yeah, I
before we.
just wanna make sure.
Yeah.
So a few observations It's really hard to talk about this sort of thing when everyone's in the room who we're talking about. I mean, we're all human, this is difficult. Both of the candidates have incredibly strong backgrounds. And I think however this gets decided, our kids are gonna have a good person on the board with their kids' best interest in mind. We might all disagree over nuances. One thing that I've considered is this is a very short term. We're talking about maybe 9 months, and then this seat is up for re-election. So I do believe personally, with Dale's prior experience in the school district, with being involved, and I think he will be easier to hit the ground running in our specific board. That's nothing against Chelsea, I'm impressed. I also, had exposure with Dale. My daughter has done biology project, and he helped volunteer with prairie grass stuff, and so I've seen him interact with some of the students, and so that's why I voted for Dale. But I think the other thing is that we have to look at the dynamic of the board, and we are working very hard. It's been a lot of hard work to get to where we are today as a board, to be able to work well enough with each other to get anything done. And so someone on the board isn't going to like someone else that gets on, I get it. But that's what we have to think about is, can the board function as well one way or the other? And so that's what I'm pondering for my next vote.
I would just like to say I agree with what Carl said. I actually had Dale Dalkey for my 9th grade science teacher. He was an excellent teacher, never showed favoritism. I have fond memories of my science class dissecting a frog and all kinds of different things. I feel like he would be, just like Carl said, he would hit the ground running with all of his experience and knowledge of our district currently, and it, like he said, it is just a 6 to 7 month position.
Anything else? Anyone else? Go ahead, Amy.
I'm going to put a plug in. I mean, this is nothing against Dale Dalkey. I've known him for a long time. I think he'd be a great candidate as well. But I'm going to say something about Chelsea Lovejoy with her psychology background. We've got a big issue with mental health issues, and we heard some good reports, and we know we're doing good things. And I would like to see that continue, and I just think with somebody that has a psychology background might be helpful to that piece of the puzzle. Thank you.
Anyone else? Dominique?
So this decision is a really great problem for me to have, right? To have 2 people that that I think both would be great to have on the board. I would say that even coming from someone who worked in the district, there's still a learning curve, right? It's helpful to know everyone, but that doesn't mean that you have experience with the processes. I know Dale does have experience on the board, on boards in the past, so I think that is good. I just don't think it means that it would be much smoother than having Chelsea. The other challenge, and so the challenge for me is, I love the idea of having someone else who's been a part of our district, but when you look at Chelsea's credentials, for me as the educator who loves learning about things and working with people who know more than me that I can learn from, there's no comparison for me. So that I think that's for me sort of why I'm leaning towards Chelsea. It doesn't mean I don't think that Dale would work well on the board, or Dale, sorry. But when you look at how the professionalism of even of what was provided to us, like, I would be very excited to work with Chelsea. So it's hard for me to lean the other way.
Thank you. Anyone else, comments?
I guess I'd like to echo what Dominique said. I agree with what she said, as well as what everyone else has said, quite frankly. Like, we're in a position of having two absolutely, either person before us right now would be absolutely fantastic on the board. I will say right now, as a board member and as a parent, I think that the decisions before us, when we're talking about the major projects for next year, when we're talking about the work plan, when we're talking about the experience of students in our school, when we're looking at, on the horizon, looking at parent surveys again, I really like the idea of having another active parent, somebody whose kids are in school right now, doing the work, being part of it. And that's part of the reason that I am leaning toward Chelsea right now.
Anything else? Anyone else?
I've spoken enough.
So, Abe, you and I first spoke about this opening back when it first happened, when you and I talked one evening about the process that we would use. And one of the things that you said to me that night that you were looking for is a former teacher or a mental health professional or a medical professional. Dale, with his counseling degree, fits one of those, as well as he's obviously a former teacher. And I understand everything that you folks have said about Chelsea, and I don't know Chelsea as I know Dale, but I agree. We have a good problem, but that's why I would and have in both rounds voted for Dale. I think that he brings a lot of things to the board, as in prior experiences. And Dominique, to your comment about him, one of the biggest things that I think I said to you, Abe, when we had that discussion was, I wanted someone who has board experience. That's important to me, that we continue down the road that we've gone in the last few months to be a better, more cohesive board. And I think somebody has that experience of being on a board. You're absolutely right, Dominique, that there's still a learning curve. There's no doubt about that. But understanding how boards work and so forth, I think, is important. So that's where I'm at.
It's not, I don't say something. Since
I thought that it might get you to come in.
So I'm tempted to kind of read through, things out loud that are emailed to us and so on. But I think, as I kind of, think it through, here's how I feel. Both of these people are some of the best people in our community, right? Absolutely the best people in our community who have amazing experience and would, benefit the whole community to be involved in as many things as possible. I support Chelsea. I think she's a fantastic candidate. I have not met Dale before. He's obviously also a fantastic candidate. And I'm very proud these people are in my community working on the things that I care about. That's, above all, the thing I want to say. So this process is agonizing for such a good decision. I propose a suspension of the rules where you just flip a coin at this point and get it over with. That's a motion.
Is that a motion?
Do you mean literally flip a coin or like the hat
Well, if no one wants to second, that's fine, but to me, it's agonizing to have this discussion when I think, everyone's spoken in favor of the person they and almost certainly originally voted for. I predict another 4-4 vote if we do that in the next 30 seconds, right? Can we just say these are both fantastic candidates and let it go to chance? Or is that not acceptable?
We have a motion on the table.
I'll second it. I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I'm not saying how I'll vote, but I am disappointed that as a board, that we would end this way. So I would like to end it differently, although I take Abe's point.
Amy?
To what you just said, this has been done many times before, we're told not to have. So it doesn't mean that it needs to be the president, but it has been done before. So it's not like it's something that we're just all of a sudden deciding to do, on the fly.
I'm really struggling as well, because I would like to not have to go to that flip. On the other hand, if any single one of us flips a vote right now, we don't really have consensus. We just have one more person flip their vote, right? And so true consensus is different than that. So I guess I'm comfortable with a coin flip with that said, because one more vote by itself isn't the kind of consensus that I think we wish we had.
Just a follow-up. I feel like in a forum, we do have consensus, at least I hope so, that these are great candidates. So I hope that's established as,
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
that it's a, with the numbers we have, it's essentially an impossible decision to make.
I agree with you, that's what I was gonna say, was the idea that 3 or 4 of us are in the same, like, 3 or 4 voting for the same people are going to, like, change, like, sounds like magical, I guess. And I think we've already come to the conclusion that whoever we choose would be a great addition. So I don't think this is a situation where even if we're split, like, it's not harming our district. Like, we would love to have consensus, but regardless of the decision we make, we've gotten to a point where we have 2 great candidates and either one will work really well for us. So I'm really happy to just end this.
I would add too, whoever doesn't win a flip, I hope that they would run in the spring.
Question for you all to ponder for a moment. Is there anything that you can think of that could be done or said that would make you change your mind?
I doubt either of these candidates has some dark past that we're unaware of,
I wasn't going there.
Our closed session was only 2 minutes long, and, I think, we're looking at the positive things these candidates have done, and it is amazing. So.
I don't disagree, I just wanted to get that out there. I'd hate to, tomorrow I have somebody say, well, if I'd only known that this person had done that, well then, those kinds of things. All right, waiting for a moment for Andy to return. Sir?
We can't push them both on, you can't do it.
What's the policy not that if they're...
Actually...
This isn't suspending the rules though, is it? That's what that's what I was gonna ask.
The third time,
Yes.
it's fine.
Here's what I would suggest to that point. The policy says if we vote 3 rounds total, then we can do a game of chance. So I would suggest that we do that 3rd round, follow the policy, and then we can move to that other option.
Either way, we can suspend the rules. There's no need to take a 3rd vote.
You have to choose the method of.
Correct. I would already entertain a motion to suspend the rules and have it withdrawn. It's like, do what you want.
Let me read this quick. Okay, we could do another vote, but we don't have to. We could just go with a motion to suspend the rules again and literally flip a coin if that's what you want in your motion. So we do have a motion on the table. It was, read it back, please.
The motion on the table was to immediately do a coin flip.
Okay.
I believe it was seconded by Amy.
Right. So, might I suggest you add to your motion that we suspend the rules and move to a,
The motion is to suspend the rules to resolve this with a coin flip between the two candidates, Chelsea Lovejoy and Neil Dalton.
Amy, you're good with that, right?
I agree.
Okay. Okay, you can flip a credit.
Oh, there's no Brian.
They have to vote.
And Brian can flip it too.
Oh.
Did we,
Well, we need to vote on it.
or illegally?
What is the suspend the rules? Yeah, yeah, we need to say the rules.
Rachel Henderson,
Yes.
Mark Hillman,
Yes.
Carl Palmer,
Yes.
Amy Riddle Swanson,
Yes.
Charlie Schneider,
Yes.
Angie Skillings,
Yes.
Dave Smith,
Yes.
Dominique Stewart.
Yes.
Okay, right.
Okay, motion passes. Flip a coin. Chelsea, heads or tails? Which one do you want?
Yes.
All right. She chose tails. Come on up, Brian, flip it. Let's, do we need to inspect the coin? It's a bicentennial.
Because of course it is. Just a standard quarter.
All right. Chelsea has tails
Is on the back side.
and Washington is on the face. And, yep. All right. Chelsea has tails, Dale has heads. You gonna just let it fall? All right. Heads.
Okay.
Dale. After that, it's going to be processed. Yeah. Dale, Joe will be in touch to do the oath of office and so forth. We'll have, so that we can have that all done before the annual meeting on the 22nd. Chelsea, I encourage you to sign up for next April. We'd love to have you on the board. And thank you to all who are a couple still here. Appreciate your time and your interest. As has been said many times, this wasn't an easy process, and I would sure like to change the process in a way that makes it a little bit less excruciating for all. It's not easy sitting up here when you have good candidates like we did to talk about people in public the way that we needed to. So with that, we will move on to the action agenda. Yep. 6B, approve reduction in school meal prices for 22-23 school year.
I make a motion to approve the decrease in lunch prices.
I second.
We have a motion by Amy and a second by Carl to accept the proposed change.
Yes, and what was proposed by the Director of School Nutrition, Michelle Closer, is that the reduced meals for the 2022-2023 school year would be free instead of at a reduced price, and that the daily lunch prices would be reduced by 50 cents. The reason for this is that Mrs. Closer was notified just recently that there is a waiver from the Department of Public Instruction for this year's paid lunch equity calculation, which allows us to do that. Additionally, there's going to be additional reimbursement for meals for this year only. So we are hopeful that we would be able to continue to provide free lunch for all students like we did during the first couple years of the pandemic, but that legislation was not continued. At the same time, we think this is a positive for our families. So it is recommended that the board approve these changes, which again would all reduced lunch prices would go to free, and the other lunch prices, the regular price lunches, would be reduced by 50 cents each. Breakfast in the school district will remain free for all students.
discussion?
I'll just say I was really happy to see this on the agenda, and I'm glad that we're able to do it, and I'm glad that the DPI has made the transition back into paid lunch a little bit easier on families.
Quite a meal for $2.45. Any other discussion? All right, let's vote. And that passes 8-0. And on to the action agenda 6C, approve the staffing plan for the food service area in 22-23.
I'll take a motion.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'll move to approve the staffing increase.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Rachel, a second by Dominique to approve the staffing plan addition.
So along similar lines, Mrs. Colzer is requesting that 2 additional part-time positions be added for the 2022-2023 school year. These positions would be at Oakland Elementary and Wakanda Elementary and would allow for an extra lunch line so students could get through the lines quicker, giving them more time to eat, get outside for recess, etc. We also think that with going back to paid lunch, it's going to be a little bit of a learning curve for the students. So this will help reduce or eliminate any backlog of students waiting in line while they're figuring out their lunch codes and all that stuff. So this is, she's able to do this through the increased reimbursements. Also the fact that our food service fund is very healthily, has a very fiscal, I can't speak right now, has a good fund balance, thank you. So it is recommended that the board approve this.
Joel, can I just use, if this is additional 3 hours per day, so it's not full-time positions, correct? Each of those schools gets 3 more hours per day?
Correct.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, let's vote. All right, 8-0, motion passed. Moving on to the discussion items. 7A, discussing the work plan.
Well, it's hard to believe that we're already getting towards the end of August, but when you look back at all the work and all the discussion that the board has had throughout the summer, and really at the end of last spring, discussing the work plan, the strategic plan for this next year and moving forward, there has been a lot of work done. So after receiving the input from the board at the last school board meeting, the league team and I, we went together and we put together the work plan based on those deliverables and measurements that the board would like to see. As you'll notice, the work plan is very hefty. I know there was some discussion about trying to trim it down a little bit, but when you look at all the different things that the board had input on and also was recommended by the leadership team, there are multiple work items under each of the pillars of the strategic plan. I think it's a very aggressive plan, however, I do think it's doable, and I really think it's needed. I think by accomplishing these items in the work plan, I think that'll help us get to the deliverables that we're looking for our 5-year strategic plan. So at this point, this is a draft, certainly open to additional input or direction from the board, but I do think it's important that we establish the work plan with the school year getting ready to start. Any questions or comments? I know you've seen this stuff a lot.
I have one kind of overall comment / question. You talked about how ambitious this work plan is, and there's a lot on here. And I'm wondering if, I guess my question is, like, when during last year's work plan progress did you start to lay out like what the priority goals were in the event that, you know, it wasn't possible to accomplish everything? Not anything. And then as part of that, would you consider doing that again this year if we get a few months into the school year and that needs to happen?
It's a little difficult to compare the 2 years because with so much change in the board and all the work we did with strategic planning in general, we're already about a month or two behind where we were last year. So from that standpoint, I think it was actually about now that we had those goals prioritized. I'll be honest, when I first started doing this, I started bolding the ones that I would prioritize, and then when I got done with it, they're all bold. So, or almost all of them were. So I really think it's going to be difficult. I think all of this work is very important. I will say also last year, we were really concerned about the Delta wave that we had, you know, seen coming. This is a little bit different. I'm not saying that we're not going to have some challenges. And what I would ask is that if we do have those challenges, that I certainly would feel comfortable bringing it to the board and saying, I think we need to prioritize this a little bit. But I guess at this point, I don't see a reason why we would need to do that unless the board would like us to.
So the plan here is discussion tonight, any recommended changes, and then vote on the final version on the 22nd.
A week from today.
I thought that might be it.
It's going to be a quick turnaround. It really is. I mean, with getting this meeting done, getting all the minutes out, and then getting board docs ready to go out on Thursday, it's going to be a busy week. We have our new teachers coming in tomorrow morning, so it's going to be busy. Are there any suggestions or changes?
I don't have a suggested change, but just a comment under Pillar 4, conducting another family survey. I imagine this is already kind of on your radar, but I guess I'm hopeful that when that, in the planning process for that survey, we put some attention into what the gaps were last time in terms of responses. We talked a lot when we read over that survey about the overall response rate being fairly good, but the breakdown in terms of like who was responding and what we were missing in terms of demographic populations in the school district, and how the survey can be rolled out in a way that is, you know, addresses whatever the barriers were that stopped people from doing it last time.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll see that next week then. On to 7B, Legal Services Report. I believe that's Leah.
Yeah, I'll introduce it though, and I appreciate Leah putting all the numbers together. As you can see, board members, the legal expenses for the school district were a little bit higher in 2021, 2022. And I think that was largely to do with a lot of the issues we dealt with the pandemic. But you can see that it's still well under budget and lower than 3 out of the 5 previous years. So I think we continue to use legal resources wisely. But an example would be like for this board appointment, I ended up sharing with the board a legal opinion about whether or not closed session should be used. Those are the kinds of things that are very important, and if we don't use our legal services, we could end up costing ourselves a lot more dollars or other resources because we're not following the law. So I try to be careful when we use those, but I think at the same time, it's important that we make those investments. Leah, is there anything about the numbers that you wanted to mention?
I just wanted to add, Quarles and Brady Law Firm is listed there. We had no expenses this last school year, but we used their services for our debt service refinancing. So when you see them on there, they're mainly debt service and finance related.
Yeah, there's a lot of T's that need to be crossed and I's that need to be dotted when we do those refinancing documents. Okay.
I have a question.
Amy has a question.
I can understand why the expense was greater because of, like you said, the pandemic and some of the issues that went along with that. But during that time, I thought that the district also had another legal cost with a firm in Madison having to do with the hearing piece. And I was just wondering if that's noted on here.
The due process hearing ended up going over the insurance deductible, so that was covered through our insurance by the time it got referred to Madison.
Okay, so actually it's a little more than this, other than the fact that the insurance picked it up.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, discussion? Okay, thank you, Leah. 7C, review updates to the Sdma school safety assessments.
I appreciate the work that the principals did to review the safety assessments that had been conducted a few years ago. And what they did is they went through all the different recommendations and identified which of the improvements had been done, which ones needed to be a higher priority, and which ones can maybe be more in our long-term planning. Before talking about any of the details, I want to say that I believe that our schools are very, very safe. I think that our community has invested wisely in our schools, and any of the most important updates were done right away. At the same time, we're always looking to make our schools safer, and there's always more that we can do. And no matter what we do with our buildings, though, it's the relationships with our students and staff members, families and community members that really make the difference in terms of keeping our schools safe. I really appreciate the work and the collaboration that we have with the Menomonie Police Department. And in fact, I had a meeting with the Chief of Police this summer, and we discussed not only these assessments, but also some things that we can work together on in terms of securing grant funding and continuing to look for ways to make our schools as safe as possible. In categorizing the different recommendations that were discussed, one that was kind of repeated throughout the recommendations was that finding a way to provide the Menomonie Police Department with access to our live security camera feeds in the event of an emergency. And that's something I'm happy to report has been done. Katie Krieger, our Director of Technology, has been working with the police department, and in the event that we do have an emergency, they will be able to access that live feed. Other things in terms of the vegetation around the school, we have a lot of wonderful bushes and other things, but some of them were overgrown and some of them had probably run their course. So we did a lot of trimming, and that was one thing that the assessments identified as having large bushes and large vegetation, especially near the entry areas, increases risk for the school. So we took care of a lot of that, and our maintenance department did a great job. We have ordered a lot of new and improved signage that will be installed in school grounds. We are running into some issues in terms of supply chain and getting those in a timely manner, but I expect to have those installed hopefully this fall or as soon as possible once we're able to receive the actual signs. And then some other things, adding newer updated labels on doors and windows for quicker identification of location or any potential problems with broken windows. We saw those across the board. But again, the principals did a report for each of their schools, and I guess at this time, if there's any questions or comments, I'd be happy to take them.
Amy?
I believe we have a policy about classroom doors being locked,
Yes.
but I know that sometimes that doesn't always happen because they prop their doors open or whatever, and I just want to make sure that, that the doors are actually being locked, not just saying they are.
Well, our first of all, it's really the entrance doors that are most important, and those are locked, and our principals and teachers and staff members do a really good job checking those during the school day. I know that the principals have custodial protocols so that they're checked as well. But you're right, when we're talking about 3,400 students and all the different staff members we have, there are times when people are in and out of the doors, and that's something that we continue to try to attend to. In terms of the classroom doors, they don't necessarily have to be shut and locked all the time, but we do prefer to have those doors locked so that if a teacher needs to pull the door shut, they can do that in quick action.
I hate that we have to do that, but
Oh, tell me about it.
that's reality right now.
Yes. Anything else?
Any other discussion? Carl?
I just want to also thank the principals. I last night read every one of those, top to bottom, and so it is a lot of work, and we appreciate that.
Yes, very much. And very important work that sadly has to be done. Any other discussion? All right, 7D, review items for the annual meeting. That's on you, right?
Sure. Just a reminder, everyone, I think all board members know this, that the annual meeting will be held a week from today, 6 o'clock p.m. at Menomonie High School. We'll be in the tiered lecture hall. Now, the board is scheduled to meet in a special meeting prior to the annual meeting, and that'll be at 5 o'clock. But just a reminder for board members, the powers of the annual meeting are defined in state statute, and I linked that in for you. Leah has done a great job working on the presentation. I still have some of my parts that need to be worked on yet this week, but we're getting it done. And I also shared for board members the booklet that the School Board Association puts together in case you have any questions about the annual meeting and how that runs. It is limited by state statute, but it is an important way for us to collaborate with our community. Any questions today?
We're here.
I'm sorry.
How much has it been advertised? Because we always seem to get such a small number, and I haven't seen it advertised very much. It wasn't in the flyer either. And I thought we had talked about maybe putting that in the flyer at one point that went out.
I don't recall that we were putting the flyer, because I know that flyer sometimes gets out at different times. It has been posted on the website. Jenny, it was in the newspaper once already, and it's going to be in again this week, is it?
Okay.
So yeah, twice in the newspaper. It's on the school district website. We'll be hitting social media with it by the end of the week as well.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion on that? Next week,
Monday.
5 o'clock, regular board meeting, and then annual meeting follow at the high school.
Yes.
All right. Items related to the next meeting dates, board committees. Again, your agenda there for the next coming meetings.
Charlie, I would like to remind board members of the invitation to have lunch with our new teachers. That's going to be held at the high school on Thursday, Thursday. That's August 18th, starting at 11:30. So any board members that are able to attend, please RSVP with Jenny. You could tell her tonight if you know what your calendar is. I know not many board members are usually able to make it just because of work schedules and such, but if anybody is able to make it, I'll be sure to introduce you, and you'd have a chance to talk to some of our new teachers.
Any other questions or discussion on that?
On that specifically, or in this general?
Let's go with that specifically first. None. Now on, items related to next meeting dates and so forth.
I just had sort of a question / request. We had talked about having the opportunity to tour some of the buildings when we first got on the board, and since we're adding a new member, I think it would be great to get those scheduled this fall.
Yeah, thanks for the reminder, Dominique. I did remember that, and I have a note on it. My assumption is that board members like to do that when school is in session, so you can see things how they operate. So I would think September it'd be nice to tour as many as possible. 7 different buildings. I don't know if we could hit them all in one day, but even if we schedule a couple of days, I'd be happy to offer that.
And the plan then would be to have the entire board or as many people as can attend at one time on that? Okay. So at the next meeting then you'll query on that maybe, see what that's at? Sure. Okay. Perfect. All right. Anything else on next meeting, Dominique, was that? Okay. Excellent. Entertain a motion.
I so move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
I second.
Motion by Carl and a second by Dominique to adjourn. We stand adjourned. Thank you all.